Hi, Speechies. It's Sarah, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Mutual Recognition Agreement. This is the agreement that several different organizations in English-speaking countries that are like ASHA, the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, got together and decided in 2008 that it would be easier for members of their organizations to get certified in other countries. The organizations that are included in the Mutual Recognition Agreement include Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, and Ireland. So all of those countries, including then the United States, gave almost a pathway to getting certified to work abroad. I want to tell you about how I successfully got the Speech Pathology Australia, that's the organization in Australia, membership as a certified practicing member there. In June of 2020, I applied using their paperwork that's available on their website. And so for each of these organizations, you have to go to their website and pull down the exact paperwork that they want. You can't just assume that because you have the CCC-SLP, if you're an American, that that'll just immediately qualify you. It is lengthy, and it took 3 months from June through September for it to be processed. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm an Australian citizen. That did not influence my ability to get the SPA membership. It was because I had all the documents. And last year, there was a part of me looking at the Australian response to the coronavirus, made me think that I wanted to be sure to be certified there in case we decided to move there. First, you have to fill out the MRA agreement paperwork from their website. And it's lengthy. It took me, I would say, a week going through all their information. And I would come back to it and fill in more and more as I worked through it. And so what you need to know about these organizations' certifications is it's not a guarantee of a visa, and it's not a guarantee of or an offer of employment if you get their certification. However, it could make it easier to get a visa and easier to get an offer of employment. I filled out the mutual recognition agreement paperwork, but they also wanted some more information. They wanted a letter from ASHA saying I was a member in good standing. It is not hard to, request that letter on the ASHA website, but all these steps, this time, it does add up. I also had to include copies of my transcripts because they wanted to make sure that I had had dysphagia. The other thing they wanted was within the past 5 years that I had worked at least 1,000 hours as a speech pathologist, or within the past 5 years, it was my CF time. So what I did to prove that was that I reached out to a previous employer and asked for an employment verification letter. And I asked them to really be specific about the time that I had worked, because I didn't want them to just say I worked there and not give the detail about the hours and then have to get an additional letter. So that took a little time. It took me finding the right person to explain to them that I needed more than just your typical employment verification letter. So that was the extent of everything that I needed to submit with the MRA agreement paperwork. Plus, I believe it was about $700 to submit. So it's not cheap. I think that this is important that they have a higher fee because they don't want you to just fool around with their time. And they're really weeding out people who aren't serious. So I submitted it all in June 2020. They sent me various emails to say they got the information, and if they were missing something or if they had any questions, they emailed again. I also had to send a photocopy of my passport, and you would have to do that too. You'd have to definitely have a passport, be able to take a photocopy of your picture and identifying details so that you can prove your identity. That was included. And then in September 2020, they reached out to me and said, you've been approved to be a certified practicing member of Speech Pathology Australia. Now fill out this form that indicates you're joining as a member and pay an additional fee. So Definitely not cheap. There's another fee that you have to pay. It certainly wasn't over in September, but I submitted what they needed. It wasn't as hard because I'd already completed all that other paperwork, and I think I had the certification within a couple days. So it's fully ready to work with that certification if I found a job. And luckily, I did not need a visa, but you would if you are not an Australian citizen. Speech Pathology Australia, their renewal period is July 1st through June 30th of the following year. Whereas in the United States, it's a calendar year that your ASHA certification lasts. So January to December. So keep that in mind if you're applying for Speech Pathology Australia certification, and you know it's coming close to June, you thinking about 3 months. If it's like February, you might want to wait until March, because then you don't want to have to double pay your enrollment. But I think they would probably work with you with that. My new Speech Pathology Australia membership expired June 30th of 2021, and I paid the enrollment fee for the annual fee to keep it going. And I highly recommend doing that once you get the certification. There's no need to let it lapse after you've gone through all that. Um, and I love having it in my back pocket in case I do need to go back to Australia. I want to add Canada in particular. I looked at their recognition, and they empower the state speech pathology organizations a little more than other countries do. So getting the Canadian certification, I know is, I believe it's a little bit harder. I remember a friend of mine who moved to Canada had a bit of a tough time. And you also have to pass a test that you have to sit for. So just keep that in mind. If you are looking at some of these other countries, they have unique requirements. It is probably going to take longer than you expect. So if you're going to do it now. And if you want to work abroad, there are many different speech pathologist Facebook groups devoted to speech pathologists who want to work abroad. And I highly encourage you to join those, because I've seen that, for example, I saw somebody post about a job opening in Australia where the organization would want American speech pathologists and would help them get a visa and employment. Might as well get your Speech Pathology Australia paperwork in for the certification now, so that you can get into some kind of really favorable position with a potential employer. I hope that helps you kind of understand some of the process you go through the mutual recognition agreement,